All righty. Welcome back to the Adventure Media Podcast. I am Trent.
I am Christian.
And we are here with a very special guest today. We've got Skyjacker Suspensions. We've got JR and Evan McCurry. And these guys are literally the glue that holds this whole battleship together, so to speak. But I mean, these guys, in many ways, don't really bear much of an introduction just because it's Skyjacker Suspensions. I mean, one of the most iconic brands in the off-road industry. And you guys have been around for, what, 52?
51 this summer.
Yeah. 51. All right. So 51 years. Family run. We're second and working on third. And is fourth gen working there yet?
Not yet. The oldest fourth gen's 14. So
okay, all right. So we're getting close.
Yeah, he said
enough to push a broom.
That's right. So let's. I'm thinking just let's kick this off because we're talking a little bit about the history of the company. JR, why don't you walk us through how Skyjacker got started and where you are today?
Sure. Well, obviously my dad, Lonnie Sr., started Skyjacker back in 1974. Of course, it started off as a hobby, being here in Louisiana, mostly based upon hunting. And it was to get to where the bigger deer were, you need to get through the swamps down here. And so we needed to get bigger tires. So let's get a lift kit on. And so it really did start out of a hobby, a passion. That was kind of their weekend fun, was to go out, not just mud hogging, but just trail riding, which down here, mud's going to be the biggest thing, mud and water you're going to go through. So you needed to get into deep area. He had an early Bronco and a Scout, and that's kind of where we got started. And so he kind of turned his hobby into an occupation and just continued to grow. When I guess I started here like Evan whenever I was very young, and just continued on through. Sat down with mom and dad as I got out of high school, and I went for a marketing degree. My sister got the accounting degree. She works here too. So it's been a family affair for many years. And now we have 5 of the third generation that work here as well, including many of y'all know my niece, Mallory. She's our marketing director. She followed me with a marketing degree, and she was a store owner for a few years herself before joining us. And I have, my daughter here, my youngest of my tribe, Evan, working here with us. And Evan's been with me side by side since he was in the car seat. Yeah. Wherever we were, rock crawling or just Easter Jeep Safari or everywhere. So, we're proud to still be family owned and operated. It has its challenges at times, but at the end of the day, we all know the main goal is to make a successful company, products that are dependable and usable on the road, off the road. And so we just continue that momentum through a family-owned and operated business.
Okay. Very cool.
Mom and dad are still involved in the business. They're still here at work every day, and it's great to see them come in. They ride to work together, go home together. They're not the first here or the last to leave anymore, but they're still very active in the company.
Keeping an eye on things. So
awesome.
You guys are always looking forward with new products and stuff like that. But one of the things I appreciate about you today is that you're not just omitting all those old part numbers that service those old Scouts, those old Broncos. So you've still got like a leaf spring suspension set up for a 77 Ford or something like that.
Yes, for sure. Well, what's ironic is, and I guess it's a normal pattern, something we didn't foresee, but how much of the old suspensions have actually increased in sales. You hit a natural lull as new products come out. You get in between. Well, now they're old enough. It's like we're selling restoration springs now.
Right.
And so now that business has really peaked again. And some of that, naturally, everybody knows this industry, like a lot of the companies have gotten bought up by private equity companies and larger companies. And so they start weeding out a lot of the older, slower moving parts. Well, all those go to somebody, and we're still here and we're still selling those. And, I guess the other thing we've tried to do is go back and actually improve a lot of those old parts. We worked with Jeff at IH Parts, and we went back and improved all of our old Scout leaf springs. A lot of those were designed in the 70s and 80s before some of the technology was available that is today. And so we try to go back through when opportunity presents itself to improve those designs and make them function better with technology we have today. And even leaf spring design, has improved a lot in 50 years. So,
right.
Try to make those.
You guys were on the forefront of that too with the soft ride. I remember, the marketing back in the day, and so you were doing a lot of special things to make leaf springs ride a lot nicer than the other lifts on the market. Like tapered spring ends, Teflon inserts.
Yes.
You used bolt clamps instead of pinched.
Yeah, that's
spring
true.
Clamps, all that stuff. So,
any way we could reduce friction and allow a little extra smoother travel, that's what we did. And we started that in the 1990s. And so anything that wasn't designed prior to that, we've gone back and changed those designs. And sometimes I would say we didn't foresee the use of some of the springs as they're getting used today. So we have to try to go back to some of those and say, hey, we need to allow a little bit more travel here, or a little more flex. And honestly, there's always room for improvement. And we never really feel like we're completely done with anything.
Right.
Gotcha.
And, talking about using them in a way you didn't anticipate, like Trent's Scout, we're running, what do you have? You have Skyjacker Chevy pickup?
It's 73 to 87 Chevy 6-inch lift springs, but they're mounted spring under rather than spring over, and it rides fantastic.
And when that spring was designed, like no one in your R&D facility was like, oh, I bet a guy's going to build a Scout on 38s with a Cummins diesel.
Right.
So
nobody thought that. That just wasn't even a concept. To use a Chevy spring under a Scout, and of course those have become a pretty universal spring now.
Mm-hmm.
In the industry or across all the platforms. And so we sell probably as many of those as we did back in the 80s when we were selling them just for Chevy trucks.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And we still carry those leaf springs in 2, 4, 6, and 8-inch lift heights, front and rear springs. So we've got a lot of the old Chevy springs, and just, it's surprising how many of them that we sell.
Well, so talking a little bit about that, I can think this is a good segue. Obviously you've got that beautiful facility behind you that we can see. And, obviously technology has changed over the years, and vehicles have gotten a lot more complex just in terms of the electronics and everything like that. And starting a 50-year-old company, obviously, 50 years ago, you had a torch, you had some steel, and you made some drop brackets and everything, and that's what you had to do. Talk a little bit about how that's changed and how you are having, what the challenges that you face today with designing modern JL, IFS Chevy, Ford F-150s and all that stuff. Talk about a little bit about the technology that you guys have to use today.
Okay, well, a couple things I think of as we got into modern day electronic sensor equipped vehicles, that definitely changed the parameters that we have to design around. We have to think about more things than we ever did, just no different than tone rings and wheel sensors and, of course, all your,
all the electronic nannies.
All the nannies. That's the word I was looking for. And so with a lot of these, we do FMVSS test them, take them out for a sophisticated third-party testing. But before we even get to that point, you just have to be sure none of the nanny lights or indicator lights are on the dash and everything drives properly. The electronic stability control isn't going off for the ABS. There's a lot more things that have to work.
Yeah.
So we have to keep those parameters in check to be sure those factory safety devices still function as designed. Because for us, we don't feel like we're designing products for off-road use only. To where you can just go turn all those off or unplug those, ignore the lights, and just drive it off-road. Because I'd say the foundation for when we started designing lift kits, or my dad when he started it, was really number one for road use. Not everybody had an extra vehicle for off-road use only, so it was your daily driver. And we keep that in mind today, that most everything, including the Jeep or whatever we're designing suspension for, number one, can still be your daily driver and function properly on the interstates or, in city driving and parking and all the little parameter sensors around you. And so those things have to be sometimes calibrated. And I say that's where we get into the third-party testing. We don't do it with every design. A lot of times it's with a major platform change.
Mm-hmm.
We just want to be sure we're in check, that those things are operating as they should. And so we've always had successful testing, but it's just part of what we want to do, one, being family owned and operated, to protect our own liabilities. Sometimes that does have marketing values. Sometimes that's assurances to dealers that we've done that testing, so they have confidence in the product. But it really boils down to, we want it for our own liabilities.
Sure. Yeah, and I can't even imagine the challenges you guys face today with everything is so. Just a tire change, just leave a lift kit out of the equation. Simply changing the tire size on a late model vehicle can sometimes freak it out, and so having to deal with that. And obviously you guys have been very successful, but it takes that's the thing, is like today, you couldn't do what your dad did 50 years ago today, really. Right. Not with the same skill set and everything that he had back then. It's a completely different animal.
No, you're right.
Yeah. So let's talk. You mentioned, going. Your dad was a hunter. I know you're a hunter as well and everything. But really, I guess let's talk to JR first. How you got into four wheeling, and then Evan. I kind of want to hear you chime in on that. Like, what really got you into four wheeling? Of course, obviously, it was in the family. It's part of the business and all that stuff. But I think we can all agree that your guys' passion extends way beyond just business interests. So let's talk a little bit about that.
Okay. Well, the best way I know how to answer that is, as I was in high school, giving forethought to college, what I wanted to do after high school. Obviously, mom and dad already had the business going. I was working here in summers and after school if I wasn't participating in a sport or something. And mom and dad always kind of encouraged my sister and I, you need to find a skill set. You need to have a degree. You need to, not rely on the company. It was in its early years that they didn't foresee at that time either that it'd be here 50 years plus. And so I actually started college in computer science. I really thought I, wanted to, kind of do a little something different. I kind of enjoyed that type of technology and computer programming, that kind of thing. And, as I was doing all my trig and calculus and all this stuff I had to do, I'm like, I'm just not feeling it. I was making the grades, but I'm like, this just doesn't feel like what I want to do, because I've been used to being right. I had been accustomed to being kind of hands-on, even with dad. I've learned to pack wheel bearings, do whatever I needed to do, mechanically. And I was like, this just doesn't, I don't feel it, and so I sat mom and dad down, and that's whenever we said, well, if you want to stay in the company, we what do we need? And so marketing is where I landed. But beyond just making that career path, I really enjoyed the off-road segment of it. I have to be honest, I don't enjoy the mud, which is all we have here.
Yeah.
It stinks.
I know this.
It's hard to get it clean after you do. You never get all the mud out from under.
Clean up the brute. I still have West Virginia mud on this thing behind me.
Our as Trent knows, our mud around here, you leave it on your vehicle, it stains. It stains your tires. Something about this gumbo down here. I mean, Vern could probably explain it all, but so I enjoyed it as we started as a company reaching outside of Louisiana and going and participating, just like Easter Jeep Safari and going and wheeling in Montrose or different parts of the country. I was like, man, this is great. I get to see some country. I get to do it. So then it became into, what do I got to do to build a rig that's more capable to do this outside of our flat land area here? And I think that's where I just really got caught up in it. Like, man, this is great. I want to do that. When can I go again? Because logistics was an issue, just because you have to plan it, you have to travel, and it's hard to always. We can't just make a little tweak and say, all right, well, let's go in our backyard and check it, because it's flat.
Your closest rock crawling is about 4 hours away. Is that right?
Yes, you got to get up into Arkansas, Hot Springs or somewhere, and that's great, but that's a day commitment at least to go up there, test something, and come back. And so but we do what we got to do. But I really enjoy it, and that's when I kind of got the fever for it, was getting out there. Which a little side story to that. One way we got into the Jeeping side or the off-road side beyond our local community, because when mom and dad started the business, it really was intentional locally to service a regional area, but they got into Harleys for a while, and they would trailer them to areas like Four Corners or somewhere in Colorado, and they would go riding their bikes, and Dad had a Prevost motor coach to haul them and all that. And he came back after a couple of trips and said, man, there's a Jeep in everybody's driveway. You get out here in the Midwest or anywhere, I mean, everybody's got just an extra Jeep. We're down here, they got bass boats or whatever for fishing. And there's not a lot of Jeep in here at that time, unless it's in the mud, of course. But so he came back, and honestly, he sold his motor coach. They sold their Harleys. We bought an 18-wheeler and Jeeps, and we started hauling those around the country. And that's really kind of how we made that shift as a company, is that even him on his individual hobby of Harley riding and stuff realized that doesn't help our company grow. So he made the personal choice too to say, okay, the Harleys are gone. Let's get Jeeps and let's get out there and do what we got to do. And that's really how we got into more traveling to reach out of our area and go trail riding. And, we would see articles in some of the magazines of people doing that. So that looks cool, but we didn't really understand it until we went and participated ourselves. And that's when I caught the fever.
Okay. So. And then Evan, we'll get to you in just a second, but I wanted to bring in the rock crawling competition aspect of it, because if I remember right, late 90s, maybe very early 2000s, all of a sudden there were these cats from Louisiana with pretty big, gnarly rock crawlers, and you were pretty competitive back in the days. Talk a little bit about your rock crawling competition background.
Yeah, well, it was it was early 2000s. We started, getting non-competitive stuff in the late 90s, and like I said, I just caught the fever, and we started meeting people like Ranch Pratt with Arca back in the day, and he was putting on these rock crawls, and we're like, man, this is just. Like, I just really had the fever for it. I wanted to do more. And so we decided to participate, which honestly was a huge learning curve. Like I said, number one, we were already logistically challenged. So to practice and get seat time was a bit of an issue. So, as fun as it was and as challenging as it was, we realized that after a couple of years of competing in stock modified class, which most of the time in those days was a 35-inch tire, which felt like a big tire still, not knowing today a 40 would be almost normal. And like I said, we were in stock modified, no rear steer and that kind of thing. But you really learned some technicality, and then you had options to use buggy lines as bonus points and things like that. And sometimes you would try it and realize that just wasn't doable. Now you're too late, you're committed. But we loved it, but just logistically, it was hard to be competitive on a podium with no more practice than what we could get on a day-to-day option here. But on the flip side of that, what we learned as a company was, well, all these events need sponsors. They need support. The teams need sponsors. They need support. And so we kind of shifted about that time. I would say it's about 2003. We shifted out of directly participating as a competitor to supporting teams and supporting events, as well as sponsoring. We started co-sponsoring with Ranch Pratt and URock and those things. And then we were sponsoring other teams. And that not only led from the rock crawling time, we started sponsoring teams in short course racing with Kurt LeDuc and the whole LeDuc family, because we saw value in sponsoring teams and sponsoring events. And so that shifted us down that trail for quite a number of years. And still today, we sponsor a lot, including Unreal Adventure. And we feel like we saw the value of what it takes and the need of, you've got to have sponsors for these things to happen, whether you're a competitor or a participant or not. If you see value in an event or value in a function like that, they've got to have support. It's just impossible to do it without that. And I want to say that's really where we learned that value, was competing as a competitor and realizing, man, you need brand partners, you need product partners, but you also got to have money. You've got to have some support. You got to buy gas. You got to have repairs. You got travel. You've got all these things. And I would say that's where we really learned that part of what we still do today, was also by competing, which we didn't plan to learn that. I just wanted to do it because I had a fever for it. But then we learned some big lessons, and I'd say that's where we really learned the value of sponsoring, was from competing.
Okay.
Yeah. For you guys, it's also not only the proving your product out on the trail in those competitions, and for people wanting to build their own trail rigs, but almost all of those competitors and participants have a tow rig out in the parking lot.
Right.
And you can, I can't leave anything I own alone. So
yeah.
I got to lift my tow rig, or I got to do this or that. So right. All trickles down.
Well, we found that at a lot of the events we'd go to that were Jeeping events, well, we would get back and realize how much truck stuff we sold for a Super Duty or whatever that we were there for, because that's what their tow rig was. So you're right. We didn't foresee that being the case. We thought Easter Jeep Safari, Trail Hero, wherever we were going, that, we're going to sell Jeep stuff or Universal items. But next thing you know, we're selling truck lift kits and shocks because that's their daily driver or tow rig or both. I mean, cool benefit.
Yeah, most of the Jeeps that show up at Jeep Safari, whether at Jeep, Toyota, whatever, they usually arrived on the back of a Super Duty or a Duramax or a Cummins or something like that. So, very cool. Well, Evan, we haven't heard much from you yet, so let's why don't you talk a little bit about, like I said, because I mean, obviously, being exposed to it is one thing. Actually getting the bug or the fever, as your dad says, is something completely different. Talk a little bit about how you got into four-wheeling, like beyond just, it was a natural rite of passage, so to speak.
Yeah. So obviously, I mean, Dad was always really good about bringing me along. And so like he said, I mean, I'm 25 years old and I've probably been to 20 years of EJSs, just being in car seats and doing that. And so I've just always been in all of it, just enthralled by the whole thing. And I would say the first time that I probably got hooked was the first time Dad let me have some seat time and began teaching me how to drive, because when you start getting seat time, you start understanding how things are working and reacting, and your mind starts to piece together how everything works. And that's the first time where it was like, okay, this is awesome. I've been watching it this whole time, but now I'm just completely ate up with it. And that was probably the first time I drove, was probably the first time that it hooked me to my core.
How old do you think you were when that happened?
The first time I drove on a trail was probably 14, 15, somewhere in that area. But there's a funny little story too. I'll just add in there. When I think I was like 4 or 5 years old, and we were at an EJS, and Dad was in this obstacle. I think it was in one of the bowls or something. Might have been not Hell's Revenge. It was somewhere, but he was tires just slipping, wasn't getting traction. I'm 4 years old in the back seat. Like, do you have your lockers on, Dad? And my mom always tells a story as that he reached down there and put them on and said, yeah, I have them on, and then drove right up out.
She said, what'd you just do? I said, I turned my lockers on. Yeah. Yeah, you forget sometimes that he knew that was probably the problem. You didn't have your lockers on. So.
Yeah.
Well, that's awesome. Cool. So 14 or 15, it was only a couple of years later you came on your first UA.
Yeah,
as soon as you met that 18-year-old threshold, Lonnie had you down as his co-driver.
Yeah, I think I made UA in 2017. I think
17 Arizona. Yeah, the hottest UA.
Oh yeah, it was hot. 125 on a blacktop parking lot. It's pretty hot.
Mm-hmm.
Through death.
Welcome to Arizona.
Yeah.
Well, very cool. Well, you guys have been part of UA for what? 2000,
I think was your first one. It was the third UA, I think.
Yeah, I believe my dad and mom were on the 2001. I believe. Was that the one that ended in Vancouver Island?
Yeah, we did.
Yes, that was
Rubicon up through Oregon, Seattle, and then ended in Vancouver.
Yes, and then I was on. Me and Dillard came in 2002, which was
that was Cedar City.
Yes,
through Moab on up and ended in Montrose.
Another hot one
on Calamity Canyon, I think.
Yes. Yep. And then we moved away from it for a few years, which I think that's about the time it became sponsors and things like that. And I think we snoozed a little bit, and before we realized it, somebody already had suspension sponsor. And I think that's the time we moved that sponsorship to short course racing. Mm-hmm. That's right when that happened. We couldn't sponsor UA, and just a natural progression of things. And there was also some interest from my dad in short course racing. He used to participate in the mud racing, which was a lot of high speed, high octane. Mm-hmm. So he was just enthralled by that part. And two, we were learning about coilovers. We were learning things through the short course racing. And, so that was good, but we moved back to UA as soon as the opportunity presented itself, which was 16. Yeah. And of course we've made sure since then, hey, we want to be sure now that we're in the books for the next
always
year.
Get that first right of refusal written in your contract.
Absolutely.
So I love
we don't want to miss it again. We don't want to miss out. We don't think we're the only ones that see value in it, of course. And so we want to be sure that we keep that, sponsorship opportunity. So
to be fair, you guys are a fantastic partner in this event. I think primarily, because you make an outstanding product. We've been using them on UA since 2016 and beating them, throughout the year, not just on that one event. But you guys really walk the walk. You're one of those companies, one of those increasingly rare companies that, you guys are out there on the weekends, whether you have a show to support or not. You actually utilize and use your own product. So So, and that's kind of the thing about UA. It weeds out any kind of artifice. You can't just come in here, hey, I bought this company and it sells off-roading things. So here I am. What do we do next? You guys are really, legit off-roading.
Thank you. It's all passion driven. I mean, we still love it. Even my dad does today, obviously Evan and myself, but numerous ones of us here enjoy it. We try to bring different staff to different events, and it's not like drawing straws, but it's like everybody wants to go to a lot of these events, and you either don't have enough seats or you can't pull that many people out of a company. So we have to rotate around, and we've had an engineer come to take pictures before. That was just his way to get in. Whatever we need to do to get different people there and get as many people as we can, but still keep a business operating while we're going.
Right. For sure. Yeah. Well, and it's important. It's important for everybody everybody in the company to at least experience it, because you got to be passionate. I mean, at the end of the day, you need to really be successful. You need to be passionate about what you're doing, and whether you're packing boxes or designing parts or running the company, or running the accounting department or whatever, you need to understand what this is all about. And really, like you said, one of the only ways to do that really is to get out there and see how these people are using it. Because I mean, let's face it, we've all made a career of selling people parts they don't have to have. You don't have to have a lift kit to live.
Yeah, you're right. You're very right.
Yeah, so it's all about passion. So that's very cool.
So the stuff that you guys are using on UA, it's just off the shelf Skyjacker product. There's nothing special. There's no special ringer. We had our engineering team make this up, and so I think that's really cool. But you guys also have a huge, wide smattering of vehicles that you've fielded since just 2016. You started with the Hemi Power, the 5.7 Hemi powered JK. Was that what it was? The Captain America Jeep?
It's the 6.4. Yeah, the one 6.4. We started out with. Yeah.
Not merely a 5.7, Christian. Come on.
You're going to do it. Might as well.
That's by far not the most powerful vehicle you guys have fielded by a wide margin. So why don't you talk about some of the rigs that you've brought on UA, and kind of like your take at the end of a week with living in them, and on the trail day after day and camping out of them and stuff. So 2016 was the 6.4 powered JK, and then what'd you bring from there?
Well, yes, we've done that one, and of course that particular year, that's whenever we got the opportunity to re-sign with UA, and it wasn't a lot of notice. I think somebody else had drug around. So the only thing we really had on short notice was a SEMA rig we had just built, and it was that big JK with the 6.4 in it. And we're like, well, we didn't build that for UA, so let's see how it does. So
you wheeled the snot out of that thing.
Well, it's like you said, those were off the shelf parts that we built, a long arm kit for a JK. We didn't build extra thick wall tubing we used off the shelf parts, and we wanted to see how it would do. What do we need to change? And we have made changes through the years. We've beefed up rod ends. We have changed the length of some tubings, things like that, to maybe better accommodate whether it's a stock differential or a Dana 60 differential. Sometimes you need a little bit more clearance, so you might have to stretch it a hair. And so, we try to use all off the shelf parts, unless the only exception to that is there have been times when we were testing new products that maybe we haven't released yet, but we want to offer. So let's test this 2.5 coilover, or this aluminum bodied part, or this, when we went to dual rate coils, we ran a test on UA one year. Let's just be sure how, yes, it rides good off-road, it'll stretch out, but how will it endure over a weeks of hard use under a variety of terrains, as well as the long road days, carrying gear. And so I'm going to say 90% of the time we're using off-the-shelf parts. 10% of the time we're testing new parts.
Yeah,
that
if it'll survive UA, it'll survive anything.
Well,
really.
that's kind of the way we look at it. Yeah, it's a good testing ground for it. Now, to that point, we did bring a early Bronco. Actually, it's back there behind me somewhere.
Yep, I see it back there.
That one was a little bit more custom, but we still used our same tubing like we use. We may had to build a special length of it. We did a triangulated 4-link on the rear. But again, some of that was for learning knowledge of how we could incorporate that into other things. It was a special build with an early Bronco. Kurt LeDuc helped us some. It's got a 427 in it. And again, we wanted horsepower, the Dana 60s. But horsepower is just something I really like.
Oh, that thing sounds so good, too.
And obviously my dad likes it too. So that helps that goal that we both like it, and he still likes it today.
I think one year you were coming up a draw in Escondido.
Yes.
What was the name of that place in Texas?
Oh,
I was
yeah.
just standing there watching everyone come up, and I shot a video, and just the sound of that on Instagram, that posted like way over 1 million views. People love that thing.
It is good. We still have it. It's still operational. Now, there are times when we see that marketing value sometimes is, we'll make a choice for a Jeep or a particular vehicle. And that's really how we got into the green 392 Jeep right behind me that we've brought the last couple of UAs. Was we were developing our aluminum bodied coilovers and all the way around for the latest, Wrangler JL model. And we wanted to be sure any tweaks we needed to make, hose routing, fitments, valving, and we've made changes between the 2 years. It might look the same, but we made tweaks and changes that we've also implemented into our production lift kits. We ran it with short arms 1 year, then we did a long arm. And so it's just, how does that feel? What's the difference? I remember the first time on, forget which one it was, we did a long arm JK, and originally our lower rear mounts were below the frame, because that was just the easiest place but I was hitting those.
Yeah.
And so we came back and said, okay, that's got to reroute up beside the frame. So we bring them up outboard of the frame so we can get them up from the ground. So we learn things, come back, incorporate it into our everyday kits. And
that is super nice. Both Durham and I run that kit on our, it's on my Hemi National with the JK frame, and Durham's his Gladiator. And it's so nice to come up into something and not grab that on the rocks.
Well, you mentioned Gladiator. That was one of the vehicles we brought on UA Alaska.
2019, yeah.
2019, the Gladiator came out. Of course, we put a Hellcat in it because wanted horsepower.
Well, we had some gnarly mud that year with the Muskeg and all that stuff. So you were in the beans, man.
Well, yes, we had that supercharger ripping, but it would clean out those tires and keep going. And some of that was Cooper's fault, because Cooper said, "Hey, you need to put a Hellcat in that thing," because I think they were doing one. And so we called America's Most Wanted, same guy. We went and Hellcatted it up. It worked great. But again, we still ran it with coil springs, because we wanted to test first the initial platform, coil springs all the way around. That was our first time in the rear. We tried a high capacity variable rate rear coil, not just a dual rate, because we first saw with Gladiators, it's a pickup, people are going to load them. And we wanted to test how would that ride, how would it handle the load when we load up for UA and put all of our gear and things for the week, and a spare and a cooler and all that. And, it worked really good, so we've tried to do a variety of different build ideas. But still, most of the time we're a modern day vehicle, because we're trying to equip for, the latest things on the market. And it's a little harder sometimes because you're trying to make it UA capable. One little thing, I know we're not talking about packing, but it made me think of it talking about the Gladiator.
Well, we'll get there. So let's transition now.
Yeah. So one of the things that we do in our Jeeps If you notice, like on this JL behind me, there's no tire hanging on the back, but we're running 42-inch tires. Well, one of the rules on UA is that you have a full-size spare. And I understand the need for that. You really do, because you could be in the middle of nowhere and need a tire. And yeah, there's different ways to try it. But what we do on this JL here is we pulled the back seats out, didn't need them. It's a 2-person event. Mm-hmm. And we built a spare tire mount that bolts where some of the center seat bolts go through the frame. And we built a tire carrier. And we undo the latches to the back door, and you can lean it at the right angle, and you can get a 42 fully mounted on a wheel. We do it fully. So if we got to do a change, it's a quicker change. Mm-hmm. It's fully mounted on a 5-speed lock, under pressure, full, PSI and everything. Get it in there and, roll it around creatively and then lay it down. And it's bolted. So if we're going up or down, if we were to roll over or anything, it's secured. It's not going anywhere. Part of the reason for that is we wanted weight distribution more centered, more low, not hanging off the back or even sitting up high, angled. So we do it, and then we pack around it. And we made it with a tent, sleeping bag, a couple light things on top with a cargo net, all strapped down. It fits JL and JK. So we actually we got some inquiries. People asking, what are you doing about your spare? How are you doing that? What are you doing? So we released that as a new product.
I had no idea.
Instagram
people were asking about it. Yeah. So we're like, well, why not? Okay, that's not a suspension product, but it's something we built for UA that we needed. So we're like, well, somebody else apparently wants to do the same thing. So we put it out.
You guys have invested heavily in your manufacturing infrastructure, new buildings, all the equipment and stuff. So I imagine you're using the same machine and tooling that you're building brackets with. It's just just another product in the line.
Right. Well, it's easier now when we can design it in SolidWorks, look at a 3D model, run out there, laser it out, press break it, bring it in here and check it, all within a matter of an hour. You can prototype something out, make a change, and then questions came up. Well, what if I'm not running a Dana 68 lug? I'm just running a factory wheel pattern. Oh, okay. Well, it needs a different plate. Oh, okay. Well, your backspace is different. It may need to adjust up or down. And so we can incorporate the slots and do all that. And some of those were changes that we implemented because of inquiries we had. And we're like, oh, okay, well, let's do it. But yeah, we could run out there. Oh, let's go burn another one, burn a slot here instead of this. And yeah. So you mentioned our manufacturing side. We did start adding a lot of equipment through the last few years. Even through COVID time, we realized we've got to be more self-sufficient. So we started adding a lot of equipment, but beyond just adding equipment, which was a 6K fiber laser, we've got a Fusion Art robotic welder, the 150 metric ton press brakes, and
we're way past redneck with a torch and a chunk of steel.
Exactly.
That's what I'm hearing.
Exactly. Tubing cutters and benders, and we have all that. So what's been one of the has been a little focused on is manufacturing. So we released a company, SJ Manufacturing, because we started having people say, hey, well, could you build me this? It started locally. Hey, I need somebody I didn't know somebody had a laser. Can you laser out some parts for me? And so we started seeing value in helping grow and diversify the company by starting a manufacturing side. And now we're fielding questions and opportunities. We've got a couple of manufacturing jobs already that aren't really just for our industry. It doesn't have to be suspension or lift kit market or automotive, period. Some of this is environmentally related. And it's like, oh, yeah, we can make that for you. So, it's a great opportunity that has helped us, but it all started with the core need to be able to be more self-sufficient for our own products, but it's allowed us to expand into general manufacturing as a secondary benefit.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, cool. Well, let's bringing it back to UA a little bit. Let's why don't you guys for each of you, and maybe we'll start with Evan. What was your most memorable part of this past UA, and if not, this past UA, what's kind of your most memorable moment on a UA in general?
My favorite part of this past UA was Trying Trail in Colorado. I mean, that's awesome, and that also goes back to history because they've always talked about it. They ran it way back in the day in TJs and Cherokees, and he's talked about it this whole time. So I was like, oh my gosh, finally I get to do Trying, and that was just awesome. And aside from that, it's also just like the whole community aspect of the event, like all the people there, the relationships. You get to do these amazing things with great people. And that's something that I really enjoy is the relationship aspect of it with everybody, people you've known for a long time and people you just met like a new reader. I mean, I really enjoy that part too of the trip.
Yeah. I mean, I think Trask and Steven and stuff like that. I mean, those guys are just like kid in a candy store, and it's a lot of fun.
It's
watching
them. Cool to see that, and you do really very quickly become a family on you.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's one of my, if not the favorite element about the event.
Yeah,
I do have to say that not only you and Christian, Trent, along with the cronies that y'all have put together as your support crew that runs this event. I mean, it's really some of the most genuine people that you can be around. And, your first year you're there, you realize that. But the more years you're around some of these people and you really get to know them, you see them have difficulties or, issues that then you see how they handle those, whether it's the rig's overheating or they got something that's not working. I mean, that is some of the best people that you can spend a week with. And for us, it's something we really enjoy. It's not always ideal, the temperature, the weather, what circumstances, but when you're surrounded with a group of people like that, you're like, what does it matter?
Yeah. And one of the things I'll add too is for a young guy like me, being around all these like experienced industry, almost like legends you could call. I mean, there is so much knowledge that the whole cronies, everyone has that. It's like gold to soak it up for somebody like me. Cause I mean, that's something that, I can learn to take on, as my generation gets older and grows more in this industry and something just take on, just with the rest of wheeling trips in the future and everything. I mean, just the knowledge behind the whole event is one thing too, that just like, enthralls me about it as well.
Well, it's good to know that we're not, I got to go hang out with the old farts again for a week.
Right. Yeah. And you guys, father and son sitting here in this podcast, we've got Jeff and Zaid Ismail. We've got, Riley and the other Watson boys and Steven. And it really, as a newly minted old fart, it does my heart good to see, the next generation really, latching onto this hobby sport, thing we do. And, it's all in great hands.
Yeah. Well, for me, one of the things that I really enjoyed on UA this past year, yes, Trent, you didn't even know the story behind Trying for us as a family, as my dad and I had done it before, and now here I am doing it with my son. But to speak of the group again, it was the one day we set up camp early, or had a couple of hours to just hang out because we got to visit with everybody in different groups. And to me, when I can expose my son to those type of people, I mean, it is a true off-road family that is it's a home away from home. When you're out with these guys, you feel like you're at home. You're with good people. It just, that to me, yes, I loved all the wheeling, everything we did. The scenery was just absolutely phenomenal this year. But also just being able to have an opportunity to just sit down with different groups and visit at a campsite. And I think part of why I really liked that so much is we don't really camp much in Louisiana. It's either too humid or if the weather's okay, there's too many mosquitoes and
Wake up with an alligator next to you.
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
So to have that opportunity to just hang out at a nice campsite, visit with all these same people, and enjoy a little downtime with everyone, that was a good night for me. I enjoyed that.
Agreed. Yeah. Well, yeah, and it's special for many. I mean, like I said, my preference, honestly, is not really camping either. But I agree with you 100%, JR. You know, in terms of, you know, it puts you, it makes things more intimate, makes everybody want to interact some more or whatever, and not just, you know, go back to your hotel room and crash, so to speak.
It's cool too now having, you know, several, you know, UAs under your belt. You can look back and for me, you know, certain camp nights stand out. Like I think we were in Oklahoma with the stream going through and the windmills off in the distance, and you just heard all night whoosh whoosh with the windmills kind of lull you to sleep. Or, you know, we Alaska out in the stars with, you know, the morning the moose ran through the campground.
Yeah, that's right.
You know, there's just so many different elements of different camp nights that you just wouldn't be remembering if we had stayed in the Hampton Inn.
Trent always finds some good spots to.
Oh yeah,
I try.
Thank you.
Well, let's see. This is a question we've given to everybody we've interviewed so far. So it's your turn. For each of you, what is the best piece of advice you could give to somebody that wants to come on a UA?
I think what I would say is to test your rig before you go, because a lot of times you get carried away with all the improvements you need to make, all the tweaks, all the improvements or whatever, and then you finally have enough time to load it on the trailer and get there. And then all week long you're chasing problems. Yeah, you know, that kind of robs some of the experience. I mean, sometimes it's just going to happen. But if you could take the time to, okay, drive it home a few days, go run a 90-mile highway trip, you know, go run it through an off-road area you're familiar with, and be sure that this extra 400 pounds you put on the back is, I remember a friend of mine that was on UA one year, and first thing he did, he cut tires 2 days in a row. And really what happened was he was overloaded. The bump travel wasn't set right. And the way he had trimmed the fender, it was slicing the tire. And it took a couple of days to figure out, oh, okay, I either need to grind more clearance, put a bump stop, but he ran out of tires because he didn't prepare ahead of time. And I mean, those things just happen. So to me, it would be to really test drive before you go. Even though you feel like, I know this rig, do you normally drive it with 400 pounds in the back? You know, just check it, test drive.
How about you, Evan?
For me, I'd go more so like during the week. If you have a problem with your rig, don't let it get too overwhelming or frustrating in your head. You know,
that's a great one.
That's part of the adventure. It's part of the fun, and you're around a bunch of guys where if you want that can fix any problem. So it's like you're going to be fine. We're going to get through it and still enjoy the day and enjoy the process.
Yeah,
that's a great one, Evan. That's true, because I've seen that.
I'll add to that and just say for anyone listening, like who does get the nod or the tap, don't leave your ego at home. Don't be afraid to ask or let it be known. Hey, I got this issue and I don't know. I'm struggling to figure it out, because you've got 50 some odd really good brains there. From this,
there's about just amongst the cronies by themselves, you got about between 150 and 175 years of off-roading knowledge. Yeah.
And then you have the sponsors, Stephen Watson and Tiger LeBrun and all these guys who've been in this industry forever and know mechanics and engineering and stuff on a high level.
Yeah, for sure.
We're this event. I mean, it's a team building event, really. We're all here to support.
You're right. It is
at the end of the day. So it's not a big deal if you wind up with an issue.
Yeah. So, moving on, we know the answer to this question, but the people watching don't. Is Skyjacker going to be back for UA 2025?
Absolutely. We made sure we did not miss the opportunity to be there again. Y'all did a fantastic job last year on your 25th first. And, we definitely want to continue that. We will be here again.
Awesome. That's fantastic news. Yeah. I mean, Ryan, I think we can all agree Ryan just did an absolutely amazing job with videos, and we are happy to say, and we'll go ahead and reveal now that, he is 100% on board for this year. I mean, basically it's going to be, much the same in terms of sponsors and crew and things like that, but we've actually got some new people as well that we're going to be adding and everything, which is super, super cool. So, and as I know Christian and myself both deeply appreciate the support that you guys have given us over the years, but most especially, these last couple, it's been
especially 24. I mean, it was a quick phone call and you guys were just immediately, we're in, let's do it. Let's make it happen. So thank you. We wouldn't be standing here doing this if it weren't for you guys.
Literally wouldn't. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate it. In business, you got to try to prove return on investment. That one was a bit of a risk, but I'll be honest with you. It's kind of like I said earlier about you two guys and the group that you've put together. There's times you say, I just want to be a part of something that's great, and whether it makes sense on paper, to numbers guys or not, so I think there's a portion of our sponsorship that's just because we want to be a part of something that's great.
Well, and I thought about like not even bringing this up, but I think it's worth mentioning and probably worth mentioning here. JR and I specifically have a really long and interesting history, and I actually have lived in West Monroe, Louisiana, for nearly a decade, actually. Mm-hmm. And but I was actually working for a competitor at the time, that's right. So it's a really interesting dynamic. But I mean, I can speak for myself anyway when I say that even though like I said, I was a competitor, and I bled those company colors back in the day. I always had a deep, deep respect for you guys and what you guys were doing, and you specifically, JR. And I feel like that was reciprocated, and I think that it's proven out. I mean, just with you and I have always had a great relationship. Don't get me wrong. Yeah, right. I mean, our relationship predates my time with the competitor and everything, and but it's been super cool to me. I mean, it's funny if 2005 me told if 2025 me told 2005 me that I would be sitting here having this conversation right now, I'd be like, you're out of your mind. But here we are.
That's right. Well, for me, and I've tried to embed that in my son too, we're in this industry because we want to be. We're doing this job, this business, because we want to. We enjoy it. We have a passion for it. So to me, it's always been like, whether you were working at a competitor or whoever is a competitor today, it's like, well, we all are sharing the same passion. There's no reason to have animosity toward each other,
right?
Because we're doing this because we enjoy it. Yeah. And I don't care if I'm on trail rides with competitors or we're doing things together. I had a friend of mine, that I was a customer of his. He was a supplier for me. Well, they say we were a customer, supplier, competitor, but friend all at the same time. Yeah, and you probably know who I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. And that in this industry, I don't know if that works in any other industry, but in this industry, that works. You can be friends and competitors at the same time, and why not? We're all doing this because we enjoy it and we have a passion for it. So let's do it together.
Well, and I mean, at the end of the day, another person in the industry has said, at the end of the day, there's enough money to be made for everybody. We don't need to be, up in arms at each other and at each other's throats or whatever at the end of the day, and it's just,
Right.
it's counterproductive. And like I said, at the end there's enough money to be made for everybody. That's for sure.
Yes, you're right.
So, yeah. Well, cool. Well, let's see. We are almost exactly an hour at this point. So, did either one of you have any questions for Christian or I?
I don't believe so. I just want to again acknowledge the quality that you guys have done through the years, but especially last year and a huge transition year. Y'all had a huge risk personally to take this on. I appreciate y'all doing that because it continued something that was already a great event into something that was even better last year. And just like continuing with things like this, you guys have just kicked it up to a whole nother level. And I just appreciate the sacrifices that y'all made to keep it going. And so it's not really a question. It's more of a admonishment, and I appreciate what you guys are doing.
Well, thank you.
Well, that's too kind.
Thank you. Right on. Well, let's see. Before we get into any parting thoughts, I actually just ran across a press release just yesterday, I believe. JR, why don't you talk a little bit more about this new project that you're working on, the Rock Sports Hall of Fame? Yes.
That dates way back a little bit with the Ranch Pratt days, and who had the rock crawling series, the ARCA series at that time, RCAA, and then he took it into UROC. Not only did we compete in it, we sponsored with it. Well, now he's wanting to bring recognition to people that have helped shape this rock motorsports industry as a whole. Because a lot of times it gets overlooked in maybe some of the high speed or circle track racing, those kind of things when you think of Hall of Famers. And so he really wants to bring, and I want to help serve on that board along with some other industry people that I'm glad to serve with, that to help bring the proper acknowledgement to more our specific niche of market with some of the rock crawling and rock sports that's the different motorsports in more of a rock terrain and instead of just pavement. And so I was asked to be a part of that, and I'm glad to be and to help bring the proper recognition to that market segment.
That's super cool. Yeah. And I know I have a current coworker that is a very passionate drag racer, and so he's very involved in a Arizona drag racing reunion, and they have their own little Hall of Fame thing and everything. It's really cool to see that. It's a chance for those guys to get together and acknowledge the people that did like you said, made an impact, made a difference within their community. It sounds like you guys are doing the same thing.
Yeah, we want to do that, and I think I personally realized the value in that as we experienced our 50th anniversary as a company last year, trying to find some of the history that was responsible for how we got to where we are and maybe what molded us into the company that we are. We're like, sometimes if you don't collect those things, acknowledge those things, they get forgotten. And we don't want that to happen to those people that's helped shape this sport and this industry to where it is today. So we need to recognize those, put it in, into a way that it can be archived and looked back upon, so the next generations can realize the people that helped build that to where it is today. And I think that's one reason why I really wanted to be a part of it, is I see that value.
Yeah, that's a real worthwhile endeavor. Is we go from the analog past to the digital present. It's especially during that kind of time frame that Y2K through 2012, when things were going from analog to digital. Not everything made the transition. So good on you for back and preserving that.
Thank you.
For sure. All right. Well, I think we should probably wrap this thing up. We're just right or a little over an hour. So I guess I just want to thank you guys one more time for taking your time. It's in the morning and a busy day, and I appreciate you guys taking the time out of your busy schedules and I don't know how much productivity we're ruining right now. By,
when you get back to work.
Yeah. So
I imagine a wall of employees standing behind them waiting to get in there and get going for the day.
Yes.
Will you guys wrap this up? We've got work to do.
That's right.
Yeah. So right on. Well, thanks so much, JR and Evan. And we're happy to have you on board and for this year and more great things to come for sure. So
Thank you.
Alrighty.
Thank you.
thanks so much, guys.
Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye.